Working together is a great starting point when it comes to tackling the many social and environmental issues we face today, whether it's in our own communities or with people from further afield. Cooperation builds understanding, and that is something we all need these days. Welcome to EcoAfrica. I'm Chris Alems in Lagos, Nigeria, and I'm delighted to have my colleague Malama Mukonde in Lusaka, Zambia, working with me.
Welcome everyone, and same to you, Chris. Let's take a look at what's coming up in today's show. How AI is helping scientists understand more about the state of coral reefs. Why women in the Gambia have teamed up to transform oyster harvesting. And we meet an artist in Uganda who is breathing new life into old footwear. First, something a little different. We often report on EcoAfrica about projects to help people to deal with climate change or protect nature from harm through human activity. We want to show you now a special report we filmed in Kenya about a project that is supposed to help big companies like Meta and Netflix cut their carbon footprint. As our exclusive investigation shows, such carbon offset schemes need to be carefully set up and monitored to avoid causing more harm than good.
Kenya's arid north is among the country's poorest and most environmentally vulnerable landscapes. The semi-nomadic herding communities who have migrated here for centuries have seen their pasture-dependent livelihoods threatened by climate change. A crisis not of their making. But a lucrative new natural resource has emerged that could spell a reversal for their flagging fortunes. Carbon offsets are bringing in serious money. Western tech companies like Netflix and Meta have invested millions in a project aimed at sucking CO2 from the atmosphere by controlling where and when livestock can graze. The Northern Kenya Rangelands Carbon Project says it's the largest of its kind on the planet, covering an area larger than Eswatini. It seeks to remove greenhouse gases from the air and bind them to the soil through a process known as planned rotational grazing. The idea is that keeping livestock off of certain swaths of pasture will allow plants to grow and store more carbon from the atmosphere. It's meant to reduce overgrazing and give grasslands time to recover. The project was launched in 2012 by the Northern Rangelands Trust, or NRT. The organization has been consolidating indigenous land into conservancies for more than 20 years. 14 of these conservancies are taking part in the carbon project under the NRT's banner. They've hired rangelands coordinators like Francis Bahati, who oversee how many animals are allowed onto a given plot of community land over the course of a grazing season, and make reports to calculate the amount of CO2 this helps absorb. The money earned from offset sales can go to fund wages for conservancy staff or community projects like wells or schools. The NRT and coordinators like Francis insist the process is participatory and transparent.
We have board of directors and they are elected by the community. We go to them and tell this is the right time now we start to think about grazing planning. Where do you want us to take our livestock? We are not restricting livestock. We try to support the elders to do traditional grazing, but in a modern way.
So, theoretically, big companies in the global north get to take their emissions off their books, and local people in the global south benefit from the money invested. Community control with no coerced restrictions on nomads' movements. Sounds pretty great. But the reality on the ground is not so simple. Lemako Charo has been traveling for 2 days with his camels across the wilderness. He says grazing boundaries imposed by the carbon project's implementers have forced him to come north in search of pasture.
Life in this place is hard. The grass has been scarce and is only getting scarcer. We are forced to migrate almost up to their fence line. It's such a close distance. The grass is just there and our cows are here. Yet our cattle die of drought and the grass is just there beyond the fence. It's not right at all.
We wanted to see these fences for ourselves. So the next day, our team sets off for Sarah Conservancy, where herders tell us a well-fortified barrier is blocking pastoralists from the pasture that their animals crave. Our drone reveals exactly what the herders spoke of, a long metal fence stretching for miles across the expansive wilderness. We asked the NRT. They said this fence is an anti-poaching measure aimed at rhino conservation. But maps we filmed inside the Conservancy's offices show that land within the fence is included in the carbon project's grazing blocks. And analysis of satellite imaging shows that vegetation inside the fence line is indeed greener and more lush than the comparatively parched landscape without. This imaging technique is called the Normalized Vegetative Difference Index. In 2023, the same tool revealed that much of the carbon project's self-reported CO2 reductions were not matching up with vegetation changes on the ground. Concerns like these led to Verra, the world's largest verifier of voluntary carbon offsets, suspending its certification of the project's credits. The certification was later reissued, but not before an 8-month investigation probed issues of methodological shortcomings and raised serious legal questions. In order to be considered valid for commercial use, Verra requires land-based carbon offset projects to obtain the free, prior, and informed consent of residents. The NRT says they held meetings with community members to explain their plans, like those shown in these promotional videos, and posted brochures on notice boards. But residents we spoke to complained that low literacy rates, high mobility, and limited access to mass media among nomads rendered many of these efforts moot. Many herders we interviewed did not know that carbon offsets were being generated on their land. Those who did said they only heard about the project 9 years after it had already begun, when proceeds started being generated for the conservancies. So, if these indigenous residents were not asked for their permission to extract and market carbon offsets, whose consent was given? The Northern Rangelands Trust says their authority to sell carbon credits comes from the conservancies themselves, entities that they helped establish across millions of acres of indigenous lands. In 2021, 165 residents of community land took the NRT to court, alleging the organization established conservancies on their territory without consent. Human rights lawyer Innocent Makaka is lead counsel on the case.
Most of these purported agreements were not subjected to public participation, but we've not seen anything filed that indicated that indeed these community members, our clients, were involved, yet these conservancies are established in their community, limiting their land use one way or another.
Their suit cited cases of violent killings and enforced disappearances in a region already fraught with persistent ethnic conflict, and alleged that the NRT was using armed rangers as a private army for quelling any opposition. Solomon Lempatu does not know what a carbon credit is. He tells us he's never heard of them, but he says his father was shot dead for grazing the family's animals in the wrong place, and that he watched it happen.
I didn't know that it was wrong to take the cattle there. I went knowing nothing about the area being off limits and took the cattle inside. For me, I thought as long as I remained with the cattle it would be all right because I was still young. When my father came, he found the cattle there. As he was running to take them out of the unwanted side of the boundary, they arrived. And before even asking why he took them in, he was simply shot. That's how he died.
Allegations of lethal force against herders is nothing new. Human rights organizations and researchers have documented dozens of extrajudicial killings of pastoralists in conservation areas throughout Kenya's north, including on territory managed by the NRT. In the northern town of Merile, local youth who wanted to speak out against the NRT's carbon project and conservancy system asked DW to conceal their identities for fear of reprisals.
I am asking those contributors who are giving money for this carbon not to send any money here again. Our leaders are misusing that money. Our fathers, mothers, elders, our illiterate people. Nobody knows about carbon. They've heard about carbon, but they don't know what that is. I want you to change my voice and hide my face, so our leaders will not know who I am. They can look after you. They might take you into court, or even you can be kidnapped, or even killed.
In the capital, Nairobi, these demonstrators are marching to Parliament to deliver a petition demanding that their community land rights be upheld. Protester Paul Kesau says any proceeds accrued from trading carbon offsets should benefit indigenous residents first and foremost.
They should treat us, we are an equal, partnership. But at the moment, whatever they are giving us, as if it is a favor. But no, we are the owners of the land.
But where are all the revenues from the Northern Kenya Rangelands Carbon Project going? Market rate estimates suggest that somewhere between 19 and 43 million euros worth of credits had been sold by 2022, and some of that money has gone to fund student scholarships, water points, and tourist infrastructure in the project's area. For a place as economically marginal as Kenya's remote north, that is some serious money. But very little of it is actually getting to the communities. According to project documents, up to 30% of this revenue is siphoned off right at the start by a US-based for-profit company called Native, in the form of marketing fees. Vera, the body who validated, reviewed, and later re-verified the offsets, also takes a cut for their trouble. After that, consultancy fees for soil scientists, and a 5% cut for Kenya's county governments. From here, the remaining funds go to the NRT itself, which retains 40% for what it calls operations costs. What's left is divided equally among the 14 participating conservancies. But here's the kicker. Even from this meager portion, not a penny of carbon revenues is distributed directly to individual herders, households, or settlements. Instead, it's retained in a common fund that conservancies must submit bids to fund specific projects. In 2025, residents of the Northern Kenya Rangelands Carbon Project and another NRT conservancy finally had their day in court. Judges ruled in their favor, declaring that a conservancy which covers roughly a fifth of the carbon project's area was established unconstitutionally, and ordering the NRT's rangers to withdraw.
I was so happy. That word I cannot express what I felt today. If the investors really need to buy carbon credits from the community, they come directly now to the Community Land Management Committee, and we are expecting it to be undertaken in a transparent manner.
The ruling could spell the start of a new direction for Africa's lucrative carbon trade, one that centers the interests of indigenous residents rather than multinational middlemen.
If you want to know more about that story, you can go to the YouTube channel of DW Planet A for the full report. Now, slippers or flip-flops are popular all over the world. Once the plastic sandals have worn out, though they are often just thrown away, and like all plastic, they take hundreds of years to decompose, which is a huge problem for our planet. In Uganda, a young artist has found a creative way to make use of them.
Allen Nabukenya is combining her passion for art with care for her environment. Collecting discarded flip-flops is the first step to a process she has invented to turn plastic pollution into something useful. Uganda, like many places around the world, is littered with hundreds of thousands of plastic flip-flops. This one, this farmer pulls out of his field, is about to be given a new creative purpose.
To my surprise, this girl collects them, and we see her getting out beautiful things.
Nabukenya turns the flip-flops into paint, which she uses to make works of art and other objects. For the artist, it's a way of coping with the mess people have been making of the world around them.
Besides the saving of the environment, we are promoting the culture of recycling in our country. So this could be something very interesting if other artists can actually come and try it out.
At her flip-flop collection point, Nabukenya begins to reclaim the original bright colors that enticed people to buy the footwear in the first place. Scrubbing the flip-flops by hand and leaving them in the sun to dry is a laborious job, but is crucial for her project. Transforming them into art materials, back in the studio, she uses a belt sanding machine to reduce the footwear to a fine dust, which she collects and mixes with a binder to make paint. With such a variety of discarded flip-flops, Nabukenya has been able to create a palette of bold colors with which she expresses herself. She has also brought in other materials into her artworks, such as stripes of discarded vehicle tires. Nabukenya is making a name for herself in the Kampala art world and internationally with the art she makes from flip-flops or slippers as they're known locally.
Her technique is so unique, and the reason as to why I love it because of the texture, and another thing is she conserves the environment by using slippers and tires. Yeah, instead of burning and throwing them away, but rather she turns them into life.
Nabukenya hopes that her art can raise awareness of our effects on nature and change people's attitudes towards products that we no longer have a use for.
I'm here to save nature. Our people have mismanaged waste a lot, and we are here to tell them that this can be twisted around, and after the functionality that they actually know about, they can maybe do something else, and this is an ending life.
Besides her paintings, Allen Nabukenya also designs and adorns fashion items. The Ugandan artist is looking at more use for her recycled paint. With so many flip-flops still to be removed from the environment, she says she could produce house paint as well.
Coral reefs are among nature's most beautiful works of art, teeming with life. The vibrant ecosystems are home to thousands of different species of marine life. But global warming and other human activities are threatening these biodiversity hotspots with extinction. By 2050, scientists fear most of them could have disappeared. They urgently need protecting, and that's becoming easier thanks to AI.
Life sounds very different underwater. A technique called passive acoustic monitoring allows researchers to listen in 24/7. Off the island of Réunion, the method is being used to measure the impact of human activity on coral reefs and to assess their health. The challenge is to detect when things are going well and when they're not, how certain areas are evolving, and then to respond with management measures. These measures can be as simple as restricting access, preventing fishing in certain areas, etc. The marine biologists use underwater microphones, or hydrophones as they're called, planted close to the coral reef. The recordings allow them to detect when greater numbers of certain species enter the reef, a sign that they are spawning. Back on dry land, the researchers evaluate what the microphones have picked up. It would be practically impossible to listen to this amount of data in real time. We've now got over 100 terabytes of data. This is a huge amount of information, spanning years of audio. Humanly, it would be very difficult to listen to all of it. This is where AI and our traditional signal processing algorithms can help process years of data in a few minutes or hours, depending on the tools and analyses we need. They can then use the information to create sound maps of the reef, showing the spots where humans create the most disturbance, or where marine life is most active. The data could also help local authorities set up protected areas, or to curb tourist activity or shipping when the fish are spawning, for example. The team plans to take their project off the Indian Ocean island one step further. In the next stage, recordings of ambient sound from healthy reefs will be used to attract more life to degraded ones by broadcasting them underwater. Acoustics can also help to bring back small fish larvae and corals, and in this way restore the ecosystem.
We now head to the Gambia. The West African country's Atlantic coastline is abundant with oysters. Harvesting of these prized shellfish is usually done by women, and it can be hard and dangerous. So it was great to meet a team of women who are working to make oyster harvesting not only more sustainable, but much safer as well.
Oysters flourish in mangrove forests. At high tide, the mangrove roots are covered by the water. The oysters attach themselves and grow in peace, nourished by algae. Marie Demba and her fellow oyster farmers were inspired by this natural symbiosis when they set up their oyster farms on the Gambian coast. Their constructions use bamboo sticks and oyster shells to imitate natural conditions.
We take the oyster cells itself to go and process new farms like bamboo rods, and we tie them with bamboos inside the sea, the river side. So it will bring whereby this small oyster can just attach onto it. As it takes time, it becomes a big oyster.
Around 8 months, in fact. The farm outside the village of Kartong is near the banks of a tidal river, so it's relatively easy to keep an eye on the oysters. The women used to go into the mangrove forests to harvest wild oysters, which they rarely do today. Wild oysters are harder to collect. They are smaller and it damages the trees in the process. What's more, tidal swells can make it very dangerous for the women. For Marie Demba, the new farming technique only has advantages.
When it is time to harvest, you just cut the rope. You put it inside your basket, then you come out with it. You boil it, and then start the process.
Marie Demba is one of 30 women in the community who have set up 2 farms. They always work together and also share the harvests. First, the women cook the oysters, then they remove the meat. Oyster farming is part of a 5-year food and agriculture organization project that ends in 2025. It is designed to give people here sustainable sources of income. Until now, coastal inhabitants have often encroached on the mangroves for fishing and logging. Scientific studies have shown the crucial ecological role that mangrove forests play.
Mangroves are one of the most vulnerable tree species around the world. And obviously, the loss of mangroves is going to have a huge effect on the biodiversity within the forest, the ozone estuary. One of the impacts we are going to have is that mangroves, they contribute in sequestering carbon. So when we lose the mangroves, it means we are going to have more greenhouse effects.
Reducing carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere will slow global warming. That's why a sustainable relationship with mangroves is vital. Oyster aquaculture farms haven't yet caught on in Gambia, but the hope is that word of mouth will boost interest in this high-value harvest. The project also includes regular training for the women involved, be it setting up the farm or how to sell the oysters. And they have access to a solar-powered freezer to store their produce.
We need at least some capacity building so that they can have the socio-economic benefit of what the trade they are doing, because there are benefits to it. But unfortunately, because the system is not that much organized, they don't know. But the industry is a lucrative industry.
The women not only benefit from the project, they also give something back by planting mangrove seedlings.
Others plant trees, but we are more focused on mangroves. Whilst harvesting oysters, we pay attention to the mangroves. From time to time, we also go round to find out if people are cutting them or not.
The women of Kartong have learned another cultivation method in which the oysters grow in net bags. By using aquacultures instead of exploiting the mangroves, the women not only protect the local environment, they are building their own livelihoods. Their oyster farms have another wider benefit.
We will have to take charge of our destiny by ensuring that these oysters are reared, in conditions that are suitable to us. It is going to help in improving the production as well, and then we will be able to feed ourselves with the fish and aquaculture products that we want. So obviously, aquaculture is the future for self-sufficiency.
As for Marie Demba and the other women, they can already do more than just feed themselves and their families.
The oyster business is very nice. From you have your home consumption, we pay school fees, we others bought land for themselves. we took it for home consumption. Yeah, so it is a very good business.
The Katong Oyster Project is a good example of how environmental protection can succeed if the people affected by it also benefit.
And now it's time for us to say goodbye. We hope you have enjoyed what you have seen and maybe even feel inspired to go out and make a difference in the world. And if you do, tell us about it. Write to echo@dw.com. We love hearing from you. I'm Malama Mukonde in Lusaka. See you next time.
And I'm Chris Alems in Lagos. If you're keen to watch more insightful stories, just search for EcoAfrica online. You'll find a lot there to keep you going until we're back next time. See you then.